What is going on, everybody? It is so good to be back recapping the first couple days of free agency. We're going to be handing out grades for every signing here. And the beauty of being a football YouTuber is I don't owe anything to anyone. I can say whatever I want. I don't owe anything to the agents who leaked me information, or I don't have to be level-headed working for a network and owe all these people all this by not really telling you what I really want to say and just kind of being streamlined with all my opinions. No, not here. I can say what I want, tell you what the good signings were, what I think the bad signings were, who overpaid, who's going to end up helping their team, who might actually end up hurting their team, all that stuff. So I'm super pumped for this video. Please make sure you drop a like button down below if you enjoy. And then if I don't mention a signing as we go or a re-signing, basically if it is a re-signing and I don't talk about it, it just means I don't have any strong opinions on it. If I don't like it, I will talk about it, but that's basically how that's going to go. And then if it's another signing that I didn't talk about, just consider it a C, something that's not super noteworthy that I needed to trim out of this for the sake of time. So let's hop in here. We're going to go in order. So we're going to start with the A+ grades, working all the way down to the Fs. So starting at the top, A+ here for the Phillip Rivers signing to the Indianapolis Colts. Super low risk, 1-year deal. And Rivers is just a year away from winning a playoff game in Baltimore. He's never been a guy that relies on his arm strength anyway. Yeah, maybe it's dropped off a little bit. If it has, so what? This is a low-risk signing, just 1 year. They have plenty of cap space. So I love the concept of if you get Phillip Rivers from a year ago or anything just short of that, the Colts are legitimate playoff contenders in the AFC, especially with Tom Brady and the Patriots maybe not looking like much of a threat next year. So you're really just worried potentially about the Chiefs and the DeAndre Hopkins thing, which, by the way, we're going to talk about trades at the end of the video. So moving on, Jack Conklin for the Browns. You go back about 2 months ago, all these teams during the mock drafts, all the fans of these teams saying, we're going to fix our offensive line through free agency. Well, I always said supply and demand. These guys don't really hit the market. And sure enough, most of the best offensive linemen caught the franchise tag. Jack Conklin, one of a few really good offensive linemen that did hit the market. About 13 teams really want this guy, but the Browns are the winners. So they're going to get a young franchise tackle. Yes, he was expensive, but I'd rather pay him buku bucks instead of some of these lower level tackles that we'll talk about later on in this video that got some real overpays. At least Jack Conklin can really play. Maybe they draft a tackle at 10 and give Baker a top 3 or 4 offensive line. Same logic here for Graham Glasgow. An expensive contract, but it's worth it. He is a total stud. Denver has done a really good job patching up that offensive line from a couple years ago, and I think this is another step in the right direction, so an A grade for that. Corey Littleton, easy grade here. A contract, like $12 million for one of the best cover linebackers in the NFL. That's market value. Like, that's not overpaying. That's what the Rams were going to have to pay him to keep him there. So really love that. Huge need, valuable position, a true cover linebacker. So a great signing for Raiders defense that I've been very critical of the roster talent of. And then Amari Cooper, an A re-signing here for the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, he is now, I'm pretty sure, the most expensive wide receiver in the NFL. Basically, long story short here, how often do I say that the ability to separate is the most important trait for a wide receiver? Amari Cooper might not be the best quote-unquote wide receiver in the NFL, but he just might be the best separator at wide receiver in the NFL. Huge asset for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Great job to retain him after taking that risk and letting him hit the market using that franchise tag on Dak. So they make it all work out, but they are going to lose this next player here, which is Byron Jones to the Miami Dolphins. Expensive contract for I'm not even going to say a low-end number one corner. Like, Byron Jones is a really solid number one corner. Not an elite superstar corner, in my opinion, but you pair him now with Xavier Howard, a really good duo, and a great secondary there in Miami, and they have the cap space to do it. Kendall Fuller, another secondary signing. Pretty good valuable contract here. 4 years, $40 million for the Redskins. They get Kendall Fuller back. Clearly no bad blood there with the trade. Shows you that money talks more often than not. So a valuable asset for the Redskins, who really needed some better players in the secondary. Really starting to like how that defense is shaping up. Not going to make the cut in this video, but also brought back Thomas Davis. to play with Ron Rivera again, continuing to add good talent to this defense. Next up, we got Brian Bulaga to the LA Chargers. Now, the combination of the Chargers medical staff that is just infamously terrible and Brian Bulaga, who just can't seem to stay healthy, it could be a dangerous duo, but when healthy, Brian Bulaga is one of the best pass blocking tackles in the entire NFL. Huge need for the Chargers. So a B+ grade here for the Chargers. A good contract as well, about $10 million a year, which is not that much if he stays healthy. Now let's talk about Tom Brady. Now I think based on some of my Twitter comments, which you guys can go and check out on my Twitter if you would like, I think people would expect me to give this a worse grade than a B. I don't hate it from the Bucs standpoint. I just think this is going to get a huge positive spin when in reality, Tampa was the only team really prepared to offer Tom Brady a real contract. And my opinion is that Tom Brady didn't choose Tampa Bay because he wanted to go to Tampa. He chose Tampa Bay because they're the only team in the NFL that actually wanted him. I know the Chargers were reported, but they didn't pony up the $30 million that Tampa had to do to bring him there. Ultimately, I don't think it's a great scheme fit. I think Tampa Bay is really just doing this to sell tickets and create hype, something they've been doing for years and delivering short on, and I probably expect that to happen again. Be happy to admit that I'm wrong if this happens. I will say this gives you a really good out for Jameis Winston, which was definitely inevitable. Able to kind of stabilize the culture there, and you do get a really good quarterback. You're not getting an elite quarterback. You're not getting the greatest quarterback of all time or whatever. You're getting a really solid system kind of quarterback that's going to not make mistakes, distribute the ball, basically play point guard. They got to improve this offensive line, though, because Tom Brady can't move. So I do think it's a good move for the Bucs, even though I poked some fun at all of this on Twitter. Let's move on. DJ Reader to the Cincinnati Bengals becomes one of the top paid nose tackles in the league. Look, he's one of the rare nose tackles that can generate push as a pass rusher. Probably never going to be an elite pass rushing guy, but Cincinnati low-key has one of the best defensive lines, deepest defensive lines in the NFL for sure. So I liked that signing. I didn't think it was an overpay by any stretch of the imagination. Then we got another linebacker here to the Raiders. Really like their aggressiveness to fill this position. I think it's an underrated position, and honestly, I think these are both pretty good contracts. $7 million a year for Nick Kwiatkowski. Has never been a full-time starter, but when he's gotten those opportunities, he's looked pretty damn good. So definitely some good signings for the Raiders, not overpaying, not going to make the cut here, but as I sat down to record this, I saw they brought in Carl Nassib as well to add some edge rotation to a group of edge rushers that to me are rotation caliber players with Max Crosby and Clelin Ferrell. So I like that signing as well. Next up, the Green Bay Packers bringing in Ricky Wagner before free agency actually started. Just $5.5 million for a starting caliber tackle. You know, he's not crazy. He's not super consistent, but half the price of Bulaga for about 2/3 of the player. I think it's a pretty good move. Also not going to have to abandon any compensatory picks because they made this move before free agency started. Now we got Teddy Bridgewater, and as of this recording, I have not seen the contract details. I know it's a 3-year, $60-something million contract. Is it a fully guaranteed deal? Is it more of like that Mike Glennon situation where he can kind of be there for a year, maybe two, but they get easy outs, so they're not tied to him long term? Reality is Carolina's in a rebuild, but they had nobody in the building that I felt any confidence in at quarterback. Some people were surprised by this because it's like, what are you doing? You got Cam Newton there. I've been saying it for how long on this channel, guys? Cam Newton can't throw the football anymore. He is not worth anything. I don't think anyone's going to trade for him. I think that Carolina's going to end up releasing Cam Newton. And I don't even know if he's going to get signed by, at least for a good chunk of money, by anyone. So assuming this isn't like a fully guaranteed contract, which we haven't figured out yet, I really like it. Even if the guarantees are in the first 2 years, I like it because they need something there to entertain the fans there. It's not going to be Kyle Allen and Will Grier. So I do like the signing. It kind of keeps you afloat, but it's not some blowout risk, at least I would think. If you're guaranteeing them a bunch of money in the third year when your team might actually be ready to compete with maybe a Trevor Lawrence or something, that's when it could lower this B grade. But for the most part, I like the Teddy Bridgewater signing. Then we got Randall Cobb. Look, in a vacuum outside of the DeAndre Hopkins thing, he's a really good slot wide receiver for under $10 million. If he stays healthy, it's a pretty good signing. So we're going to go with a C+. Then we're getting a little lower into the overpays here. So Kyle Van Noy to the Miami Dolphins. Excellent scheme fit. I think you're getting a really high floor with this signing. You know what you're getting, but not an elite playmaker. Doesn't really do any one thing all that well. Just does everything like pretty well. So pretty expensive, over $10 million for this kind of flex outside linebacker edge kind of guy, but he's going to come in and issue some stability there. Now, they had a guy there in Vince Beagle that I actually thought was doing a pretty good job in that role. I guess maybe they'll just play both of them. We'll see. Decent signing. Don't love it. Don't hate it. James Bradbury to the Giants. Another deal. Don't love it. Don't hate it. To me, I see a really high-end number 2 corner. Big-bodied guy that can handle big receivers really well. But, you know, the thing is, with Judge coming in here, is he going to implement this Bill Belichick defense, the Miami defense, the Detroit Lions, the multiple defense that runs a lot of man coverage? If they do, James Bradbury to me is going to get exposed running a lot of man coverage. So, you know, $15 million for him is a little steep, especially because they just invested in all those corners last year. I don't love this signing. More good players is a good thing, and they have cap space, so that boosts it up a little bit, but so-so signing to me. Then we got Michael Brockers to the Ravens. If it wasn't the Baltimore Ravens, I'd probably be more critical of this signing than it is. And I also saw that he's only a $5 million cap hit in the first year. Good example, you know, you really got to pay attention to the breakdown of these deals. But Brockers to me is a decent player. $10 million a year is really steep. And he's kind of a guy that I would be willing to let someone else pay this contract and then look in a month to add a good run defending defensive tackle like Brockers. Yeah, he's a slightly above average contributor as a pass rusher, but I think this price was pretty steep for him. And you just added Calais Campbell as well, who to me in that defense is going to play the same position as that 3-tech defensive end in the 3-4 scheme. Now we've got Christian Kirksey to Green Bay. Really overreacted when I first saw this. I thought it was going to be an $8 million cap hit, a 2-year, $16 million contract. It's really just a 1-year contract with a bunch of injury incentives. This guy has not been able to stay healthy. He's a good run defender when healthy, does not have the best instincts in pass coverage, but a clear upgrade to Blake Martinez. A little expensive still at that $5 million mark. That's why it's just getting a C, but he is now the best linebacker on that roster, and if he's healthy, he's going to be worth that $5 million, although it's probably going to go up because of boosters. But that doesn't hurt Green Bay right now. Still keeps the cap space open. And then we got Joe Schobert, a lot of linebacker talk, a lot of Browns linebacker talk here. So going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Schobert's got some really good length and instincts in coverage. He's a good run defender. I see him as a slightly above average linebacker. A little steep there, becoming, you know, paid like Corey Littleton at $11-12 million. He's not an elite cover guy. He's not really elite in any aspect, but a good player. I don't know. I'm not crazy about this signing, especially for a team that's kind of in tank mode, but they needed a linebacker. It kind of tells me that Telvin Smith will not be returning. More Browns talk here. Austin Hooper, pretty hefty contract. He's a good player, starting caliber tight end. Pretty overrated to me, kind of padded numbers as the Falcons and Matt Ryan just kind of trailed all game and he just kind of sat down in soft zones. Not a mismatch problem to me, not a blocker either, just not quite worth over $10 million, but a stable contested ball target for a Browns team that is really trying to surround Baker with as much help as possible. So I don't hate it, just pretty steep price for this player. Now we got Javon Hargrave. Pretty expensive for a guy that's going to be part of a rotation here in Philadelphia. It's pretty simple. Like, he's a really good player, and I don't know where else they were going to spend this money. Personally, I would have tried to get a corner in there. Maybe they're waiting to see that thing all play out, but, you know, they really like those interior defensive linemen. Let's just leave it at that. So Houston's going to bring back Bradley Roby. He's fine. 3 years, $36 million. That's number 1 corner money for a guy that's a middling number 2 corner. Don't love that. Trey Waynes to Cincinnati, kind of the same deal. Like, he's fine, but that's really expensive. It's not like Cincinnati, from my understanding, is like floating in cap space. So I don't know if I love either of those signings. Valuable positions at corner, and they are starting caliber players, so you don't shred the signing, but I'm just not crazy about those. Mario Addison to the Buffalo Bills. Now, I'm assuming that this 3-year, almost $30 million contract is very front-loaded and something they can get out of because he is an aging veteran that has shown a lot of regression in recent years. Now, it gives them a very similar player to Shaq Lawson as that bigger-bodied edge player that can help them in the run and be a good scheme fit, so I do like that element of it, but he's, to me, a guy that I would let someone else give this contract. I think there's going to be other players that you can find for much cheaper contracts than that, but the Bills do have a lot of cap space to play with, so I don't hate it, but I'm definitely not crazy about it. Shaq Lawson, we just mentioned him. He is going in the division to the Miami Dolphins. total overpay for me. He's a run defending edge rusher. And, he's a great scheme fit. He's that Belichickian defensive end. He's going to hold his lane. He's going to hold his man, not let guys run past him. That's great. It's not a $10 million player because he doesn't rush the passer. So I'm not crazy about that. It gives them some beef up front. Definitely an upgrade to what they had last year, but a lot of money. I know they got cap space to spend, but at some point you might want that cap space. Then we got Detroit. Very clear that these Belichick descendants are looking for those scheme fits, and that's what you're getting here with Jamie Collins. Now, basically sucked outside of New England, and you're trying to bring him back in here in that scheme. You know what he's going to do. Over $10 million for this player who just hasn't been the same for the last 3 years. It's pretty steep, especially when you consider some of the other moves Detroit's made. Good scheme fit, a pretty good player, but I just am not crazy about this signing. Jordan Phillips to the Arizona Cardinals. Guy had like 9 sacks on 20 pressures last year. He's basically getting paid off of that. This is a complete overpay. The one thing I'll say about the Cardinals, and I do have a question mark next to this, because if this is a really like long-term guaranteed contract, which I'd be pretty stunned if Steve Keim did that. My imagination is that this is going to be a pretty front-loaded deal that they can get out of if he doesn't live up to the hype of the 8 or 9 sack season that he just had. But I've been saying Arizona needs to beef up on the interior. They need to get more physical. This brings that element to the team. So as long as it's something they can get out of 2-3 years down the road when they need more cap space, it's not that big of a deal, but we'll wait and see on that. Now we got Robert Quinn to the Chicago Bears. Complete overpay. What was it, 5 years, like $70 million contract? Now, again, probably something that they front-loaded that they can get out of as far as the guarantees. Probably not a real 5-year contract, but for a team that's pretty cap-strong, you cut Leonard Floyd to bring in Robert Quinn for a huge contract, like $16 million. Ooh, that's a stretch to me. Quinn's a number 2 pass rusher, but you had that in Leonard Floyd. I don't know. I see this as a pretty lateral move, which when you're strapped up against the cap like the Bears are, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then Connor McGovern to the Jets, D+ signing. He's a starting caliber guy. He's what you would describe as just a guy on the interior. There's a reason Denver let him go. They're pretty comfortable replacing what he brings to the table. But if you're the Jets, you don't have that guy to let go. Like, you need to bring, that's the kind of upgrade you need to make. You need to go from terrible to like just replacement level. That's kind of what they're doing. Unfortunately, with offensive linemen in free agency, that means you are dramatically overpaying. And the Jets have, I think they have some cap space in there, but they've been making a lot of big time signings lately, and it's a lot of them are things that I think are not in the right position as far as value goes. So that and the George Fant signing together really kind of sucks that they have to make these moves. They are upgrades, but at a huge price, and they're not guys that the fans are going to look at and be like, oh, good thing we fixed this offensive line. Like, they might do a slightly better job getting in other defenders' way than what they had last year, but I'm not very confident in this offensive line for Sam Darnold in year 3. And George Fant's a guy that hasn't even really had true experience starting at tackle. He played more tight end last year than tackle. He's a really good athlete, but I don't know if he's a good tackle. Eric Flowers, same exact deal. Complete overpay for a low-end starter at guard. They needed to do something, and they did it, but he's not going to help that offensive line very much. Eric Murray, as we get to the bottom here, safety signing to the Texans. Maybe this is compounded by how bad the Hopkins trade was that we'll talk about in a second, but this is the definition of a replacement level, like maybe roster bubble guy. Like, Eric Murray's a decent player. Like, his upside is the 32nd best free safety in the league, something like that. This is the exact kind of player that you let sit on the market. You don't give him an $8 million per year contract like on day 1 of free agency. Blows my mind. Like, this is the kind of guy you say, all right, 3 weeks after free agency, we're going to bring in here so you can compete for a roster spot on a 1-year, like $2 million contract. He is not a $20 million player at all. So I thought this was a terrible signing. Just continues to show Bill O'Brien has no idea what he's doing. Hal Vaitai, this one's going to get an F. It's also compounded by what they did to result in this. So they let Rick Wagner go, who's a better player than Hal Vaitai. Then they let Graham Glasgow go, who's a really good offensive lineman. And instead of giving Glasgow that $10 million, they give it to Hal Vaitai, who's a backup tackle. Personally, I think Tyrell Crosby, who's on their roster, is a better player than Hal Vaitai. Now, maybe they don't think that's true, which is fine, but this is a complete overpay, and I think a terrible use of resources by the Detroit Lions. Blake Martinez, going to get an F to the New York Giants. I mean, there's no other better way to put it than, like, they gave David Mayo a 3-year contract for $8 million, which is less than Blake Martinez is going to make in 1 year. And now for those 3 years, David Mayo is going to be outplaying Blake Martinez, who belongs in the XFL, for a quarter of the price. This is an absolute mind-boggling F for Dave Gettleman. I've been so hard on Dave Gettleman, but the fact that he was the guy that looked at Blake Martinez like a week after 50 XFL linebackers who are better players just lost their job and then gave Blake Martinez a $10 million contract extension just so he can let defenders come to him 10 yards downfield yet again for the next 3 years. You can't draw it up any better. I think I'm going to buy a Blake Martinez Giants jersey just because it's going to be so funny watching the Giants fans turn on this guy so quickly. One of the worst players in the NFL, independent of contract or anything. I mean, there's no other grade to give this other than an F. And then Jimmy Graham as well. I mean, I don't get this. Like, if this was a 1-year, $3 million contract, fine. A 2-year deal, fully guaranteed in the first year for $9 million, still one of the highest paid tight ends in the NFL. He doesn't get open. He doesn't block. He's not aggressive at the catch point. They already have Trey Burton on the roster. I just don't understand this signing one bit. So between that and Robert Quinn, the Bears, who really needed to be kind of stingy with their cap space and their moves without a first-round pick this year, to walk away with Jimmy Graham and Robert Quinn while also letting Leonard Floyd go, it just doesn't really do it for me if I were a Bears fan. All right, so let's talk about the trades real quick, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. The Calais Campbell for a 5th-round pick. Pretty simple analysis here. Great fit there in Baltimore. Interested to see how he's used. I really liked how he developed as a pass rusher, as an edge guy. With this Baltimore scheme, he's going to be used much more between the tackles. I definitely think he will continue to be a dominant run defender. He's going to demand blocks. I just don't know how much impact he's going to make as a pass rusher, but still a great trade. They had plenty of cap space. It's just a 2-year deal for him after the trade. And for Jacksonville, you could shred him for trading a potential Hall of Fame player for a 5th-round pick, but this is just kind of this newer regime. I know the general manager is still there, but they're trying to clean up the Nick Foles situation, everything that they've kind of screwed over the last couple of years. They're just in kind of rebuilding cleanup mode, and they just kind of had to do this, so it is what it is. Now we've got the DeAndre Hopkins trade, and honestly, I'm not going to spend that much time on this because there's nothing you can say. Like, Bill O'Brien's got to go. If I'm Texans ownership, I would step in, fire him, like, do whatever you can to block this trade. It's just awful. Like, my keyboard ran out of F's to describe how bad this is. They gave Houston, so this is what drives me insane. They gave Arizona a 4th-round pick as well. If anything, take DeAndre Hopkins out of this. Arizona should have had to give Houston a 4th-round pick to get rid of David Johnson. Instead, Bill O'Brien basically values David Johnson worth 2 first-round picks because based on the market, the Jalen Ramsey trade, the Khalil Mack trade, you should be getting 2 first-round picks for a Hall of Fame player in their prime who's not even a bad contract situation, DeAndre Hopkins. So this isn't even a contract move because you got to pay David Johnson. So it just makes literally no sense. There's no explanation for this. Just F for Houston, A++++ for Arizona. There's really no way around it. You got to be excited if you're a Cardinals fan. Then the Buckner-Colts trade. I like this for both sides. I gave Indy an A because they're the one getting the better player out of this. San Francisco's getting the 13th pick that they could very well use on a guy like Javon Kinlaw. Would be a great plug-and-play replacement for Buckner, but he's not going to be as good as Buckner, at least in year one, in a year where the Niners are trying to get back to the Super Bowl. So it's something they got to do to clear up cap space. It could eventually get you the same player. So I'd like it a little more on the Indy side, but all in all, good trade for both teams and just a slam dunk move for Indy. The only thing is this takes them out of the running for like a Jordan Love at 13 that I thought would have been a good pick for them, but that's fine. You're not going to really consider that here when you're getting a player like DeForest Buckner. Hayden Hurst got traded to the Atlanta Falcons. I like it for the Falcons. They just lost Austin Hooper. They need a starting tight end. Hurst is going to plug right in there. For Baltimore, I don't love it. We'll see. You know, they're a good drafting team. Maybe they turn that second round pick into something really special. So you do like that. But this team was at their best when they ran 2-3 tight end sets, moved those guys around, really targeted those tight ends. Mark Andrews hasn't been the most resounding guy as far as health, and Nick Boyle is not that matchup problem. So again, it's a little hard to be super critical of Baltimore because they clearly know what they're doing. But to me, it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't know what a second round pick's going to help them for next year when they already have a super loaded roster and are ready to roll next year. So I don't know. Not crazy about that for Baltimore. And then the last one here, sorry, Broncos fans, I'm not going to talk about you trading away your fullback. I don't care about that. But Stephon Diggs moving from Minnesota to Buffalo. Minnesota, it's kind of like we said about Jacksonville. Kind of got to do what you got to do. At least they played the market. They saw what Diggs' value would be and demanded that they get that first round pick. For Bill O'Brien and the Texans, like, inexplainable. Like, Hopkins is a better player than Stephon Diggs in every stretch of the word. But for Buffalo, you're still getting a top wide receiver in the league. I had done nothing but mock wide receiver to the Bills in the first round, and you're not going to get a player in this draft better than Stephon Diggs. Hell, my top two wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb, even if you somehow pulled them out, their upsides are pretty similar to a guy like Stephon Diggs. So great move for Buffalo. They needed that number one guy, and they got it. For Minnesota, you get plenty of draft capital back. Kind of sucks you got to lose Diggs because he didn't want to be there, but you could do a lot worse, a la the Houston Texans. So that was a banger. Please drop your comments down below. What signings did you like, did not like? Please do hit that like button. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.